It took less than 3 hours for Eric Schneiderman, New York's Democratic Attorney General, to resign after the New Yorker published devastating accusations from 4 former girlfriends accusing him of physically beating them and, in 2 cases, threatening to kill them.
They describe really horrific and serious allegations of abuse, slapping, hitting, choking. Bear in mind, this is an individual who was a very public champion of women's rights, who, in fact, introduced anti-choking legislation.
But because Schneiderman has been investigating and suing Donald Trump, some commentators made a story about beating up women, dismissed by Schneiderman as mere role-playing, into a story about the president.
It's interesting to see people in President Trump's orbit gloating about this, given that there are plenty of charges against President Trump as well.
But instead of going after Schneiderman for his misdeeds and his abuse of office, today's Never Trump media merely use the scandal as just another vehicle for trashing conservatives.
Joining us now to analyze the coverage here in Washington, Gail Trotter, a contributor to townhall.com and The Hill. And in New York, Kathy Aru, publisher of Catalina magazine and a former Washington Post magazine editor. Gail, let's start with this chilling New Yorker piece. Ronan Farrow and Jane Mayer reporting these terrible allegations. And Eric Schneiderman, despite his lay in denial, quitting almost immediately. That's pretty powerful journalism.
It's great journalism. It is so powerful. It shows the advantages of a press that's not afraid to challenge people in power, and it's something that should be commended. Ronan Farrow has done yeoman's work on this. And on many other subjects. And Kathy, a lot of left-leaning journalists and people like Samantha Bee, who'd had him on as a guest and then cursed him out last week, felt betrayed because he was a Democrat who did put himself forward as a champion of women's rights and even sued Harvey Weinstein. So I think there was a sense of disappointment on the left.
Right. He's betrayed women. He's betrayed humanity. It's awful. The story is awful. But as Gail said, it's beautiful journalism. I mean, this is a free press, and this is what the press is supposed to do. And they uncovered something that was horrific and horrible, and look at what happened as a result. So this is journalism at its best. Yeah, I think we have a consensus on that. So some of the media then kind of deflecting this to be about President Trump. What about the sexual allegations against him? What did you make of the way that story started to turn? Right. Well, it's a classic case of whataboutism, or the media, people couldn't feel like they wanted to pursue the real story. These are shocking and appalling allegations. There are many questions that remain unanswered, especially who knew what and when they knew it. And we see this shift to, like this Washington Post article. The headline is Trump, Schneiderman, Geitens, and the changing shape of sex scandals. So it completely changed from the important investigation that had been done that needed to be continued and followed up on to trying to tie in Republicans and particularly President Trump. Now, Kathy, some of this was because Donald Trump Jr. and Kellyanne Conway seemed to be enjoying Schneiderman's downfall, although that was hardly surprising since he had kind of positioned himself as a champion of the anti-Trump resistance and suing the president. Right, but still, this is the way journalism works now. So we had the story come out, and now comes the analysis, and you do have a president in the White House that has his own allegations going on, his sexual allegations from different women. The Stormy Daniels is every day in the news. So we hear now that this man, this Democrat, resigned because he couldn't lead because of what was going on in his personal life. So people are turning around and saying, can our president lead at this critical time, given what's going on with these allegations? So it only makes sense that the news cycle is going to start turning and turning. This is the way journalism is. Well, and it also reflects, I think, some partisanship in the media. So two very different views here. By the way, NBC has completed, I should say, an internal review of the Matt Lauer firing, and has decided that senior management was unaware of all the sexual harassment allegations against the former Today Show anchor. That probe drawing a lot of criticism because it was conducted in-house, no outside investigation, no outside law firm, and also because Ann Curry, for example, Lauer's former co-host on Today, said that she went to management a couple of times about women who came to her to complain about Lauer. She was never even interviewed. Let me get you two in on one other thing, which is the president tweeting. This is after a study by a conservative media group reflecting other studies as well, that network news coverage of the president had been 90% negative. But the president tacked onto that tweet, why do we work so hard in working with the media when it's corrupt? Take away credentials, question mark. Gail, does that go too far?
No, it's the equivalent of Trump's bigger button tweet to Kim Jong-un.
You're saying he's going nuclear?
He
against
is.
The press.
He's telling them that he has the capacity. And I think the key part of this story is that the media do not understand President Trump is not tied to the playbook. The media think that the president should not be able to criticize the press and should not suggest reprisals for fake news and bad reporting. President Trump just wants the press to play fair.
Okay, when you bring up credentials, first of all, it's one thing to do it as a candidate, as he did in some cases. It's different when you're president, you've got the White House, you've got rules of procedures. And Kathy, I don't think that Donald Trump would really do this. I think it's taking a little slap at the press. But does it give ammunition to those who believe the president would trample on the First Amendment?
It is. I mean, what about freedom of the press? This is horrible. This is this a dictator? Are we in Cuba, China, Russia? This is not a state. We don't have state-run newspapers. I had White House press credentials.
It's just a tweet. He hasn't actually done this. Let's make clear.
But just a tweet. These are his thoughts. And I had my White House press credentials. And you work hard to get those credentials. They don't just hand them out to anyone. Mm-hmm. So to say they're going to take away credentials, I mean, we need the media. We need every man to sit inside that White House and ask those tough questions. So
but they need to be
don't mess with the media.
Them.
Don't mess with the. It's not easy to get the credentials. To say you're going to take away our credentials, we worked hard to get them. Just anyone from the street cannot just walk in.
Well,
yeah.
They do need to be responsible in their coverage, but I don't think that the penalty should be pulling away credentials. And by the way, if President Obama had said, let's take away Fox's credentials because he didn't like the coverage, I think the reaction of some who might be cheering this would be very different. Great debate. Kathy Areu, Gail Trotter, great to see you both this Sunday.